Welcome back, friends. Today I wanted to talk about the thing that's been on the tip of the tongue of every gamer for the last few months, and that is the rising prices of video game and video game consoles. So the scenario is this. Looks like the video game companies have decided that it is about time that video game prices should increase. And they're making this claim based on the amount of money and the amount of time and resources and labor that it takes in order to make these new AAA video games in the modern age. And also, they're talking about the growing prices in the hardware that is used for the new consoles. Now, being a PC gamer myself, I typically don't have to worry about this type of thing, and there are plenty of reasons for that. For starters, a PC is basically a wide range of parts that can be put together to create a setup and a system. And essentially what that means is if you know how to pick your parts, you can use the parts that are cheaper and still come out with a fairly decent gaming rig that can be used to play pretty much most games within the last 30 years. But apart from that, when you play video games on a PC, you have multiple platforms that you can choose from or where to buy your games. Typically, the most well-known platform is Steam, and through Steam, you can buy a whole lot of games. I pretty much have right now about 2,000 plus video games in my Steam list, and I haven't played even 90% of them. However, I think the most important part of that is that you can get these games at a very high discounted price. For example, the most well-known scenario is Steam sales. And you have two really large sales throughout the year. You have the Steam summer sales, and then you have the Steam winter sales. And during these sales, you can get games up to about 75, 80% off. And I think in the past, maybe not so much nowadays, but in the past, you could even get games up to like 95% off, which is just insane. But the thing about it is that typically the older games don't really sell that well anymore in a physical sense. And so they are able to put these games on the digital platform like Steam, and you can buy those games there, and they'll still make some type of sales from people who haven't played the games in a long time and maybe want a little bit of a nostalgia trip. But also for people like myself who just like to have a large collection of video games and a lot of options to play when you're bored. Now, overall, I think the ones affected the most by this are the console players and the regular person who doesn't really game that often, but who uses that as a sort of a pastime and wants to have something to be able to play when they're not busy. Now, the problem with this is I do understand the argument that the prices are increasing, everything around the world is increasing, the economy is a little bit different than it was, let's say, 5-10 years ago in terms of technology. But however, the problem is that not everyone is going to be able to pay these prices to get these new consoles. Not only that, they're thinking of putting games, these AAA games, setting their prices to anywhere for up to $100 each game. And it's not to say that we don't respect the amount of work and effort it takes to create these games, but the problem is if you create 100 games and you mark them all up to $100 each, I promise you, you won't be selling all those games. You'll be selling maybe 20% of them, and the rest of them are people are going to have to skip them because they're just not going to have the money to pay for these things. And maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing because then people have to be a little bit more picky with the type of games they buy, but it still does come out a little bit unfair for the consumer. At least that's from my personal perspective. Because again, being somebody who likes to have options and somebody who wants to be able to have a variety of different types of games, it unfortunately forces people to have no choice but to pick one type of game. Throughout this whole conversation, I also have noticed something quite interesting though, and that is the growth of the indie game and indie developers. Being that these games are a lot lower in scale and maybe not quality per se, but just the amount of resources and manpower that it takes to create smaller indie games, they are becoming more popular because of that. And they're typically sold a lot cheaper than, let's say, these upcoming AAA games that are now going to start selling for $100 a pop. I personally am a big fan of indie games because the ones that I've seen coming out so far, they are able to take a lot more creative liberties, and they're able to sort of skip all the corporate bottleneck that come along with the AAA gaming development system. And because of that, they end up being a lot more fun. Now, again, I'm thinking it might not be a terrible thing for all of this to be taking place and for video game prices to be going up, because now it does allow us to be a little bit more perceptive as to what type of games we want and what type of games we feel joy playing. And I say that in the sense of, well, we're so used to playing games like, let's say, Assassin's Creed, but we get a new Assassin's Creed every year, every couple of years, and it's pretty much the same type of game. And maybe some people do enjoy that and they enjoy playing the same type of game 100 times over. And if that's you, I mean, by all means, if that's what you enjoy, then have fun with that. But then there are a lot of other people who feel almost obligated to buy the next game in that series because they're so familiar with it. Now, with things changing, it feels like people are kind of being forced, a little bit pushed out of their comfort zone to have a look and see what else is out there. And I think a lot of these new indie games are getting a lot more traction because of that. And again, maybe that's not such a bad thing in the long run. Now, I think one of the things that's making video game players pretty upset about this whole scenario is the reasons that some of these big video games are putting out for increasing the prices. And one of them being that the company isn't able to create these new large scale AAA games without this extra income that's going to be coming in. And I think a lot makes a lot of people upset because of many of these recent AAA games that have been coming out in very poor quality, not completely finished or fleshed out, and it just kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth when you sell a game that it feels like it hasn't been completed or there hasn't been a lot of love put into it, and yet you're saying with all that money that you've made and all that money that you've spent, millions and millions of dollars, but somehow that just isn't good enough and you need more money. And I feel like maybe if they went about this a different way and kind of explained their positions a little bit better, maybe so many people wouldn't be upset about it. But again, yeah, I feel like that kind of does put a bad taste in your mouth. Now, if we saw more complete games, more interesting, more open, more creative types of AAA games coming out, and maybe that would justify the prices. But right now, it just doesn't feel that way, especially in this economy where people are pinching pennies just to buy eggs. It just somehow doesn't feel like it's going to go over very well, which is pretty obvious if you go through social media right now. Unfortunately, the video game companies are not looked upon favorably right now. I think at some point this had to happen just because everything is changing around the world. The prices of all sorts of goods and services are increasing, whether we like it or not. Sadly, that's the type of economy the world is in, the type of state the world is in right now. Does that mean that we should approve of this type of increase to video games and just accept it wholeheartedly? No, in fact, I completely disagree with that concept. And I think that there is a proper reason for the pushback. But I think it's also important for us to be able to speak to that in a very honest and truthful way and not just be angry at the companies because they're trying to raise the prices. But I think at the end of the day, when we talk, we do have to talk with our wallets and with our money. Oftentimes that speaks louder than our words. So if you are not a fan of these video game price increases, definitely hold on to your dollars and maybe go support some of these indie devs that are working their butts off to create something fun and exciting for you that doesn't take 5 years and that isn't a copy paste of something else that they've been putting out there year after year. And maybe that's more deserving of our time and energy than just fighting with the big companies. But listen, at the end of the day, that's just my opinion and my perspective on the video game price increases that are coming out. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you agree or disagree and why. If you enjoy this type of commentary and discussion, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And I will be back with some more thoughts and some more commentary about the video game world. Until next time, wish you all the best and God bless.